They look at me like I'm some kind of a dinosaur. That's what I say to people I'm playing over here, listening to music for dinosaurs. Here I am, the original dinosaur. That's fine. I buy it. But there is an art to this. Maxie was art. Dave was art. Naftullah in his own way was art. I play with all these great people. I'm one of the last ones left. And yet I still doggedly hold on to this thing because I like that sound. I like the real sound. Die Mishpacha stammt von Russland, mein Baba von meiner Tatas Zeit, geboren in Sibirien. Cheremchevo, das ist 80 Meilen Ost von Irkutsk, das ist neben Lake Baikal. Aber die Mishpacha stammt von Ukraine. My mother was 29 when she married my father. He was 40. Their relationship with religion was, there was no Shabbos. There was no kashrus there. They didn't observe anything at all. My grandfather, my mother's father, used to go to ball games on Yom Kippur, so he didn't want to know from it at all. This is my father's piano. It's like owning a Rolls Royce. He bought it in 1933 at a place called Powers Piano. I still have the bill. He paid $650 for this piano. It was originally built, according to the guy at Steinway, it was originally built in 1894. I used to sit under that piano at 3 or 4 years old and listen to him play those Gershwin things. While other piano teachers were getting 50 cents an hour, my father got $3 a half hour. Some of my father's pupils, one of them was Buddy Strauss. The sun will come out tomorrow, that one. Alan J. Lerner, the lyricist, was one of my father's pupils. Bob Keisha and Captain Kangaroo was one of my father's pupils. And what he did was he taught the kind of 1920s post-ragtime kind of a style. He had records of black piano players. Fats Waller, my guy. I started reading the books. And from the books, I got, okay, I want to hear this one, I want to hear that one. Taught myself how to play like Fats Waller, of course. This was my calling. And I just jumped on it. When I was about 13, my father finally broke down and got me a clarinet. I had the clarinet, maybe 3 weeks. I was playing a full scale in a low register. I started playing songs. I learned songs very quickly. If you asked me to play my entire repertoire, at this point I must know 10,000 songs or more, all by memory. First I learned them on the sax and the clarinet, and then I sat down at the piano and I learned the harmonies too. I did my first bar mitzvah. I was nearly graduating from high school. The word club date is a euphemism for a country club type of a job. But as I say, it was a euphemism. What it really meant was weddings and bar mitzvahs. We played whatever American songs were popular at the time, some of the tunes even from My Fair Lady or shows a little bit earlier than that. Popular songs, guys like Tony Bennett or Sinatra was singing. When you got involved in this, and if you were going to go to the Catskill Mountains, you had to learn some Jewish songs. There was a book called the Kamen, K-A-M-M-E-N, which was a folio of partly Jewish, partly Hungarian, partly Polish, things like that. And I had this book like all the other guys did. So the first one came in the book, ya-da-da-da-da-da-da, ya-da-da-da-dee-da. That's an old Freilachs. Now, later on, I found out some of my older friends that I had made by that point told me, we saw a guy come on a job at a Cayman book, we knew he was an amateur. But we were amateurs, we were kids, we were just learning. The Catskill Mountains were not really the Catskill Mountains at all. They were all these pretty crummy little towns, and these places came alive during the summer. because there were bungalow colonies, azach, there were a ton of bungalow colonies. And there were lots and lots of hotels. There must have been about 500 hotels. First place I played was an Orthodox hotel. I didn't know from nothing. Boy, was that a scare. I did not know very many, if any, religious people at the time, but there were religious people, many of whom had come over as Holocaust survivors. And they became an industry. A lot of those weddings that the Hasidim had were on weeknights. So you could make a full-time living in music, not just the weekend jobs, which were the American and that kind of stuff, but by playing the Hasidic, you could also make a nice buck on the weekdays. And I became one of the busiest guys in that line. The kind of music that they thought of for dancing at weddings, chasanas, at parties, had to do with the parshas that you would read for Od Yeshama B'Yarei Yehuda, that they were playing for the bride and the groom. Od Yeshama B'Yarei Yehuda, Uv'chutzos Yerushalayim, Kol Sasen V'Kol Bobol Simcha, Kol Chasan V'Kol Kala. Od Yeshama B'Yarei Yehuda, Uv'chutzos Yerushalayim, Kol Sasen V'Kol Simcha, Kol Chasan V'Kol Kala. I was working with two older musicians. What they did for me was more than I can imagine. Ralph, the trumpet player and bass player, he sang pretty badly, but he sang all the Yiddish theater songs. Shtetl Belts, Shemet Lavuna, by me Mr. Shane in Yiddish, of course, and A Bissel Zun, A Bissel Regen. So I got to learn all these songs very quickly. These were not in the Kamen book. These you had to learn, Also, I was able to pick up the Yiddish words because that was my training ground in Yiddish. So I was not only learning the repertoire, I was learning the Yiddish language. And some of the things that people talked about in the Yiddish culture, I learned about not at home, because my parents didn't want to know from it. I learned from the people in the Catskills who were the guests at those hotels. Das Leben vergeht uns, kein Hoffnung ist als nicht du. Mazel es scheint amul für jeden go nicht von mir. The first time I ever heard a Bulgar must have been off a Dave Terrace record. I got some Dave Terrace, a friend of mine made a tape and I copied that tape. And I learned a bunch of things off that. So all of a sudden I had a small inkling of what the klezmer thing was. Then when I played with Dave, I was 19. Most of the things that he played were not his real European Freilich and Bulgar material. Most of it was the Yiddish theater stuff. But of course, Dave was Dave. He takes a look at me and says, I am teacher of clarinet. All the best players come to me. In other words, get down on the floor and lick my boots. I would be playing like kind of harmony parts. I kind of laid back because I was afraid of this guy. But he would play and these pearls would come out. I became Dave's regular keyboard player. I was his last one, his last regular keyboard player. Imagine being able to play with like Louis Armstrong, Dave Terrace was Louis Armstrong. He was a pioneer. The Epstein boys were four brothers. These guys played Jewish. They were my introduction to klezmer. Chai, the first one, his nickname was Chiswick. Played the saxophone in the real old-fashioned style with a big vibrato. Sounded like a truck starting up. Then there was Willie, who played the trumpet. He was a good trumpet player, Willie. And Julie, who played the drums. But the king of that family was the oldest brother, Max. Maxie said to me, kid, you play good clarinet. Very good. But you have to understand one thing. The dreidlach, meaning the ornaments, put those little curls and those little extra, what we call the dreidlach, are there to enhance the melody, not the other way around. In other words, if you lose the melody, it's a dead issue. There's no real improvisation going on in klezmer music. There isn't. It's a straight dance tune because the customer does not know. No. People don't even know what you're playing. Well, you're playing licks, that's all. You're playing a... It could be anything. That's moving. That's the song. That kind of thing is what these people taught me. And I was lucky that I had the opportunity to do it because here I was, at that time, a young fellow in my mid to late 20s. These guys were already 60 or whatever. They were teaching me gratis. I didn't have to go to them for lessons. They were right there. I was learning it on the job. And being that they approved of me and they liked me, they thought that I was talented. Can't go wrong with that. Maxie liked to play these things a little bit slower than most people did. The music that had been klezmer, they were old people. People who had come over in 1890s, 1900s, 19-teens or something like that. Those people were already old. By the time that I came into the business, nobody wanted to hear it anymore. It was just about gone. People thought of klezmer as being the music of the destroyed race. After all, European Jewry was practically destroyed. And the klezmer was a reminder of that. Israel was the new, hopeful, upcoming Hatikva. This is the coming place, the hope. And their new music was a music simplified that brought new hope to people. Listen to this. Atza alinu, atza alinu, atza alinu, which is not nah, that sounds too old-fashioned. That's grandma's music. You know, the klezmer revival is old. It started in 1978, 79, 80. That's 30 odd years ago. 35 years. Henry Sapoznik, we managed to get together somehow. And he brought over some of his friends, and they brought me some recordings and asked me to talk about them. I played them some of the stuff that I had. By that point, I had a few of the Dave Terrace things. They played me all these naftulas, and I picked up a bunch of recordings of that. So I started to learn some of the stuff that was before my time yet. When he got the idea for Klez Camp, I was one of the first ones he ever told about it. He wanted to make a seminar out of the thing to teach young, aspiring Jewish musicians how to play the style. That caught me right away. I was the first clarinet teacher in Klez Camp, 1985. These were American kids. It seemed to me that much of what they were doing sounded like a caricature of the music. It didn't have the flavor of the real thing. But I learned, to my dismay, people wanted a caricature. They didn't want the real flavor. The real flavor was too old-fashioned for them. It's only guys like me, we're the only ones left, and I'm one of the few that's left now at all, because almost all those guys I had up in Klez Camp are dead now. I feel that there should be a place where authenticity should be one of the characteristics of the music. I have always said that when rock and roll comes in contact with any other form of music, rock and roll eats up the other music. Rock and roll is the dominant force in music and has been for 50 years now. I can't believe it myself. I am not interested in turning it into a different kind of a thing than it really is. For some reason or other, it doesn't behoove people anymore to be authentic. If bluegrass can be played authentically and have a huge audience, people come and listen to it from everywhere. What's the matter with the klezmer? For some reason or other, it's not hip to be authentically Jewish. Why is our music, people say, it's too old. It's not my way of thinking. I invented it myself. In other words, the klezmer music, of course, is a klezmer style and tunes and things, and the Fats is I put Fats Waller into it.